Okay, this is video 6. I've decided to just keep going for the moment, thinking that what I have to say is really important. Video 5, session 5, chapter 5, I got incredibly annoyed and disgusted talking about the real state of our very highly funded support services staff, the departments, the intent. If you read their mission statements and what they're all about and the services that they're meant to be providing, it is all quality. But at ground level, just like any business, some of the staff, the most despicable, unethical, harmful creeps. That's pretty much the real problem. And a lot of really vulnerable people that have had anything to do with, Housing New South Wales or any such, even the police, if you're a victim of a crime by a creep who is supported or covered for by authoritative staff or influential staff, a lot of people give up and stop speaking up. I kept speaking up, trying to protect our community's young people and vulnerable adults. My child and I weren't being impacted, but I stepped in to protect other people's children, young teenagers, vulnerable adults, and all of the negative impact personally and financially that my child and I endured was because the offenders were enabled by the area's most senior police officers and their superiors, like I said, at LAC, Local Area Command at Bateman's Bay, and then it became Local Area Command at Nowra, no different at all. And it's very important, very, very important for, I would say, Australian citizens as a community to know more about what vulnerable people go through and why over the last few weeks our Australian news is filled with so much heartbreaking and devastating loss of life. And as I tell my story, it relates directly to what I know about those departments. And like I said in one of my earlier videos, you've got to be grateful for the good quality staff that are there and bring some people relief and support and hope, whether it is related to housing or support with food or protection from, say, law enforcement. You've got to be grateful for those staff that are there continuing to do their job as they are employed to do, and even better, regardless of the negative impact they're enduring from mongrel staff. That's pretty much what it is. Just be grateful, because you never know, what those staff are enduring as well, and they're trying to stay in that job and they're battling difficulties as well. They're fighting with themselves and experiencing trauma and, psychological negative impact because they're trying to stay in those jobs because they know that it's the right thing to do, and they're trying to speak up without losing their jobs when they know that who they're speaking up against is well and truly covered by their colleagues. Even some subordinates will lie to cover for rotten staff, and especially when they're covered for by the most elevated, right through to the court. When you're facing an unethical, destructive magistrate or court judge, you know when you are. They'll hide it in certain ways, almost comical. If you've got a judge in front of you that's being humorous and negatively impacting a victim, you can generally take a closer look, and you'll find that magistrate or judge isn't the quality that should be sitting there, making decisions that involve protection of children, the elderly, vulnerable women and men. It just shouldn't be happening. So this is going to be a short video, just following up on video 5 or session 5, because I know that I got so annoyed and disgusted as I was presenting that, but that's how it is. And again, I am not editing these videos. I am just letting them run, because it's 4 years that I've waited to really speak up in this way. Like, I have posted videos and everything of mine and my child and our dog's experiences as well. I've posted videos on Facebook. You've got criminal law enforcement that will have the ability to take down your posts when you're speaking honestly and showing evidence of the worst of community getting away with stalking, harassment, threats, vandalism, and arson. You'll be surprised. When Australia was looking at the yes and no vote with our referendum last year, Meta, running Instagram and Facebook, were interfering with people's posts, just supporting the conscious practicality of the yes vote. Even though our Prime Minister was apparently for the yes vote, Meta was blocking perfectly reasonable, straightforward posts by the general public that were just supporting the yes vote, which means that the American powers that be were being done a favour, causing discord in a country. Make sure that those who manufacture arms or benefit from conflict or benefit some way in control of an area or in making money, they cause problems in countries even like Australia. There is no other conclusion that I can come to when I see that Meta was blocking people in support of the yes vote right up to the referendum resulting in a no vote. And then you see posts that say Australians are racist everywhere. And then you have people's comments saying Australians aren't racist as a whole. There's a lot of people that voted no because of all the really scary propaganda supporting the no vote. There's a lot of people that voted no because they were fearful that they might be supporting something that was stupid in supporting the yes vote. They became very confused because those supporting the no vote seem to have no barriers, like the rubbish that you could read. Now, there's people that can give an intelligent take on the yes vote and the no vote, but me as someone who supports people's right to respect, and I think that's what it's all about. The yes vote was about showing respect and healing. That's what the yes vote was all about. And me knowing that you can have good intentions and great departments and legislation and laws put in place, but still you've got turkeys running those platforms or services. Getting the yes vote is one thing. Having practicality, decency, and positive action after the yes vote, that's where you've got to stay on it and make sure that it is as positive as it was intended to be, because the rest of community in all, positive departments and support services and everything, it's not always. It relies on people that are outspoken and risk themselves and their life, their comfort, their community, their neighbourhood. They risk themselves in some way to present what is real and fact. And that's why I've decided to do my own videos. I've got my own website. I am uploading these on YouTube, but YouTube can control facts being put out there as well. So if you're speaking up for humanity and humane behavior and action and attitude that is in opposition with this world's most powerful governments and people, then your positive, humane comments and videos and what have they can be taken down just because whoever's running the platform is pandering to the most powerful. So yes, my videos, I'm going to be uploading them, or it's, if you're watching it here, it's on YouTube, but I've also got my own website, catherinekennedy.com.au, CATHERINEA Kennedy, KENNEDY.com.au. I have my own website where no one is going to be taking down my videos, which are basically a bit of a documentary on what began happening to my child and I, specifically when I stepped in to try and protect children and young teens and vulnerable adults from the biggest scumbags, violent creeps who had unbridled access to kids and teenagers through sports and music events and everything. Just no barriers in their access. And they were enabled by the South Coast's most senior law enforcement staff. And apparently, one of those enabling staff was a female with allegedly a horrifically violent reputation around the community, who was apparently a youth correctional services officer who gloats that no one can touch her for the abuse that she inflicts on anyone, and the lies and the trauma and the disadvantage she inflicts because she's got friends high up, and then someone else who moves in those circles said that it's because her brother is one of the most senior law enforcement staff. So that everything I just said is hearsay because I have not seen her be violent. I do not know who her friends are in elevated positions in the New South Wales Police Force and also correctional services. I don't know anything about her other than she was, over this period that my child and I started to be disadvantaged, she was the partner of the family member of these creeps, skate shop, music events, and then this female that I saw as problematic when I saw her pushing her kid around in a pram in 2001 or something, to then be told in 2013 that she's a violent, uncontrolled, mentally unstable drug abuser and dealer that brags about her favourite drug being Ritalin because it keeps the weight off. So telling young teenagers that that's her drug of choice. Now, I don't know if she's got the ailments that coincide with Ritalin, but to gloat that that's her favourite drug of choice because it gives her that rush and keeps the weight off, because I'd only ever seen her as skinny anyway, like super slim, super slim. And their comments made by the people that associate with her and whose offspring associate with her. And I had to work with information that I was given and be very practical and go to the source, the apparent new boyfriend whose mother was very close to my child. I went to the source and said, if this is what's going on around these kids that you've got so much access to, it's got to stop. And I got threatened with a chisel and razor blade to my face out the front of my Bega store by her. I'd never had a conversation with her. I'd never had anything to do with her. She is the sister of my niece's ex-boyfriend. I knew nothing, and I'm assuming that my family and all those closest to them never told me any of this information about how dirty so many of these people are that they associate with and are friends with, because I have been anti-drug since I was a kid. I've seen, my older siblings and friends, their friends, and the the negative look of drug and alcohol abuse, the trauma of depression and losing your mind and behaving in a just unstable and frightening way for people to observe and endure, and a frightened way for that person to feel themselves. And I've always been outspoken, and I don't hold back, and I do think that that's why growing up with my particular family, even into adult years, and I was 34 when I moved back down the coast with my child, my baby at 4 months old. I do believe that's why I wasn't told any of this, because my family, who are such a-holes and partnered up with best friends of the most horrid people, who, if they cause, like me, some kind of dishonest disadvantage, those 4 siblings and their horrid, well, 3 of them have got horrid partners for sure. They will negatively impact me and abuse me because I've spoken up against abuse that I'm enduring from one of their cronies or business people, like real estate banks. I've even been messed with my bank accounts by creeps associated with this situation. Bank accounts and yeah, I'm just trying to think. It's not just divulging my financial status by the manager of the Westpac Bank in Merimbula to one of her besties, who was a vile, monstrous landlord in my store that I only rented month to month. But she was so vindictive because my younger brother was best friends with her ex-husband, who she trashed and said she got a lot of money out of him in their divorce because she threatened to report him for being a drug dealer. And she got away with it, but she's gloating to me when she's trying to bully and abuse me in my store, because she was all sweet and all the rest of it before I signed the lease and moved into that store. But underlying with her was she was horrible to me after I was in the store, and my business was doing really good in that store, harassing in the store, walking in and carrying on. But for her, she hated the fact that my younger brother was best friends with her ex-husband, who married, he said, this female who married to a school teacher in Pambula Primary School. She told me that her ex-husband couldn't even get an Australian woman. And the thing is, I'd met her husband's new wife. She was from Malaysia or the Philippines. I'm not really sure. Really lovely. I don't know if she married this vile monster's ex-husband for his money, because he definitely had money. I don't know what the circumstances were, but this monster harassing me in my store, and because I stood up to her and said, I can't have you coming into my store if you're going to be rude and obnoxious and carry on in my store as if me and my customers have to put up with your rot. So she started harassing more, sending me text messages and all the rest of it. And I rang the Merimbula police, and they said, do you want us to go and pick her up? And they were really nice. They were really nice. And I said, I'm not sure what to do. Like, she's associated with everyone. She's friends with everyone, but she runs amok. And it turned out, I found out a few years later, after everything, the proverbial hit the fan, one of her best friends is the mother-in-law of a filthy, dirty, behaving law enforcement officer in that Bega Valley. So for this monster who was my landlord in my first shop in Pambula, for her to say that she basically blackmailed her ex-husband during the divorce to get more money out of him and a blue house. She said, and I even got the blue house and sort of pointed over the area where my father's great uncle was murdered or suicided, right pretty much there within about 20 meters. So bragging that you blackmailed your ex-husband by saying that you're going to dob him in as a drug dealer makes you filthy. But her best friend is the mother-in-law of a dirty cop that we endured and who harassed me and my dogs when local drug dealers who were violent and vandalizing and everything else, smashing windows, everything, pulling palings off the fence so that the dogs got out. But the dogs didn't run around anywhere. I only had the dogs in the backyard. We're on a corner block, so the fence ran along the main street, pulling palings off the fence and the dogs popping through the fence and then coming back in. But I had dirty cops giving me tickets, like fines for my dogs being out. Well, hang on. These are the creeps that you're covering for and letting destroy this particular neighborhood where I actually grew up, and my child and I went there to stay. My father nagged me to stay in that house as we we're getting ready to move to Sydney because everything went into storage in 2014. We were moving back to Sydney. And so I gave in and went to my father's home at his demand, and he was very old but in the nursing home and absolutely loved my child. So we went to stay there, and it all just unfolded. Everything that my child and I had endured over the year and a half before that, after I stepped in and told these creeps, this is who you are and you've got all this access to these kids through skating and music and everything, clean up your act. Well, a couple of their cronies were renting the house diagonally across the road, and they were having parties every night. And my father's and mother's neighbours who we grew up with as well, they were all complaining about them, saying it's been going on for years and the cops won't do anything. Even the creeps that live 2 doors up, who are the filthiest mongrels that God has put breath into, they were complaining about this group to me. And the father, he knows that I don't respect him at all for the way he treated his wife and family and the way he would randomly be filthy and abusive to my father when it was off its face or something. And my father just having to ignore it because that filthy monster was best friends with my eldest brother, because that monster's sons, 3 sons, the 2 eldest, also close buddies to my eldest brother. So all you look at is your family members are friends with real scummy mongrels, but everything was hidden from me. I didn't know what they were doing underlying and what kind of horrible behavior and the destructive dealing and use and everything in community that really impacts kids and teenagers and even adults. Like, it's just all negative, really negative stuff, but it's everywhere. What I've learned, even coming back to Sydney, I don't see any of that here in Sydney because I'm not having to deal with those kinds of people until the house that I rented first here in Sydney was then bought by true abusive monsters who bought the house to develop it. And my original landlord said that they can only have the house if they honour my lease, which had another 6 months on it. And so they, under those circumstances, they bought the house here in Des Moines, and they proceeded to harass me day and night. The wife was particularly vulgar. While she had her kids in the car, she'd park out the front while I'm working, and I look out the window and here she is parked a few meters away, the first park, because I was on a corner at the back of Des Moines Oval, and she would park there with the kids in the car and be looking in at me, working at my desk facing this way, like in front of me, and just harassing all the time. Her husband, who bought the house, he was vile. And one night, one of his friends, they got out of the car, because you can hear, if a car stops and no one gets out, you turn and look to see who's out there, because being at the back of Des Moines Oval, all the cars that are pulling up, because it's such an active, sporty place and people with their dogs. If a car stops, they're usually heading to Drummoyne Oval because the sports are happening day and night over there. But when someone pulls up and doesn't get out of the car, I look and I see the husband getting out of not their white Mercedes, but a black Range Rover. And then this big tall bloke, sort of, I'm looking behind me because this is the window. And then the master bedroom is just at the front yard there, and there was no fence on the front yard. And this creep walked over, and I'm watching him, and he peered into the master bedroom window. So I've gone out like, what are you doing? And the bloke, they didn't actually own the house yet. I think it took 3 months to settle, so they didn't actually own the house. But he got out of the car and said, "You don't own the effing street." And I said, "You're on the front yard at the window." And that's the kind of creeps that bought the house. Saint Construction, SAINT Construction, is the building company that is building the house after they knocked down the house that I was living in. Perfect house, nothing wrong with it. Blonde brick, a builder built that house. It was a really good house, but they demolished it and they've done 3 levels, basement and 2-story and a pool and everything on that corner. And so Saint Construction are doing that. And this creep, the very first night that I actually spoke to him and said, after he peered in the window smirking at me while I'm at my desk working, I raced out and I said, were you here doing laps around here on Sunday evening and you're with this bloke standing across the road looking in at me working? And he kind of chuckled and he said, "Yeah, I'm the owner." I said, "Are you my landlord?" And he said, "No, I just bought it today." And I was like, it's not on the market yet, so that was a surprise. I contacted my real estate agent, which is Rain and Horn Gladesville, who lied about not knowing who these creeps were that were stalking me, trying to intimidate me so that I moved out before my 6-month lease was up. And I was harassed from the end of June 2021 right through until November, when it actually settled. And we had the lockdown for that from June 28, I believe, until the 10th of October. We had lockdown, and I'd finished one job and was starting another on the Monday after the lockdown happened, I think on the Friday. So I wasn't covered like other people that were working. They got, I think, $700 a week from the government. I didn't get any of that. So I had that entire lockdown of complete July, August, September, and then plus a few days June and October, like nearly 2 weeks in October. That whole time I was searching for some kind of work from home. I was handing out flyers, all sorts of things during that time, because I was one of the people that just in between finishing one job, starting the next, and I wasn't supported by the government through that forced lockdown that Gladys instigated. But from the lockdown, like, these creeps were stalking and harassing me. You weren't allowed to go outside, go any further than 5 kilometers, I think, from where you lived. And I don't know where these creeps lived, but they shouldn't have been stalking and harassing and threatening tenants of the house that they committed to buying, that they didn't actually own yet, hadn't settled, that whole time that I was living there. So I've gone from one thing to the next. Just let my advice, as disorganized as it can be as I'm presenting it, it is a warning to protect yourself with the written word. Don't have verbal conversations with creeps that you know are trying to rip you off. And make sure you video as much as you possibly can. And I do agree with having a video that records audio if you're enduring anyone and you don't understand why police aren't acting to support victims of abuse of any form. Just record everything, because you don't know the quality of the support staff that you're dealing with. You don't know if creeps like the ones I was enduring at the back of Drummoyne Oval, if they've got friends that work at the tenancy tribunal or friends that work in administration in the courts. You just never know. Okay. Thanks for listening if you've actually stayed to listen, and I hope it's enjoyable in between. Thanks.